let's review Tailwind configuration in a bit more detail. Up until the last episode, we were referencing Tailwind through a CDN, but you're really not going to do that too often. Instead, you'll reference it through npm as a package, like this, npm install Tailwind CSS. Now, once that's pulled in, if you check out your node module's bin directory, you should see a Tailwind executable. We can use this file to generate the default Tailwind configuration. So you'll see I already have one here, but let's go ahead and delete that and do it together. Node modules, bin, Tailwind, and we'll reference the command init along with the file name. The standard is fine, tailwind.js. All right, so now you'll see we get this file here. And if you take a look at it, initially it can feel a little overwhelming. It's a couple thousand lines of code, but it's really not complicated at all. This is where you define the basic settings for all of the various modules that Tailwind provides. So for example, let's go to width. Here's where you define your width utility sizes. So you'll notice we have a little example there. So as an example, maybe you want to set a width of 8 and a height of 8. Yeah, maybe you're making a circle or something like that. All right, well, these values are defined here. So in this case, for width 8, you'll see it right there. So this means at any given time, yes, you can refer to the Tailwind documentation, but you could also go to this file and quickly learn which options are available to you. So here we can see 1/2. That means you can apply a class of width-1/2, and that will set a width of 50%. Or if you want 3/4, you get the basic idea here, right? Now, this is going to be true for all of the modules that Tailwind provides. Let's take a look at the colors. Here we go. All right, so out of the box, you have a fairly good color palette to work with. Again, these keys represent the class names you will use. And then, of course, you have the associated values. Now, what's nice about this is you can define these colors one time, and they will be referenced everywhere that is applicable, whether it's a border color you want, or the text color, or the background color, things like that. You define them here once, and now all of those various classes will be generated. So this means I could have a class of text gray darker, or maybe a background of gray darker, or a border color of gray darker. It's very useful. Now, of course, you can modify these however you want. You can remove ones. For example, if you're never going to have orange, then you can get rid of that. And now, when Tailwind compiles, it won't generate any orange-specific classes. But you can even add more. So maybe you don't like to use the color-specific names. I don't really have a problem with it. But if that's your thing, no problem. You can define it here. So maybe secondary is red. And now, once Tailwind compiles down, you'll have a whole set of new classes. Once again, like text primary, or background primary, or background secondary, or border secondary. And in fact, let's give it a shot. I'm going to run npm run dev, and this is going to compile everything down. Now in this case, we are using Laravel Mix. I will assume you have some basic familiarity with that, and you can see here that I am using the Tailwind plugin, which we'll talk about in just a minute or so. Anyways, that has compiled down. So if we take a look at our compiled style sheet, we should be able to see a text primary class, and there you go, primary and secondary. Let's look for background secondary. Yep, that class was generated too. Let's look for border secondary. You get the basic idea. Now you can see this is also true for responsive classes. So you can see for a small breakpoint, we want this, or for a large breakpoint, we want this. So you should be able to say large text primary. Yeah, all of these classes are being generated on the fly, and all you had to do was define it one time here. Now, same thing's going to be true. We're not going to go through all of this, of course, but once you learn the basics here, you can configure it as you need to. So here's all of your margins. This is when you apply, maybe if you want margin bottom, you would say MB-4. Well, that 4 value is going to correspond to this. So that means we want margin bottom of 1 rems, or MB8. But again, maybe you decide you need something in between. All right, no problem. Maybe add MB5, and this will be 1.25 rems. Now, once again, once Tailwind compiles down, You will have an MP5 you can reference, margin 5 all around, MT5. All of those various classes will be generated as a result of this. And of course, the same is going to be true for your negative margins, for your padding, all of this stuff. Now, if we scroll down to the very bottom, let's see, yeah, right up here. So here's all of the various modules. And this can be a little confusing at first, but you'll figure it out fairly quickly. You can see for any module here, for example, we looked at the width module, and then we looked at the margin module. For each one of those, you have variants that you can reference. So for example, do you want the necessary responsive classes to be generated for margins? Or in other words, do you want responsive specific classes to be available to you? Maybe you want margin right 6 for your desktop breakpoint, but for mobile layouts, you actually don't want a margin right of 6. Well, by using the responsive variant, you can configure that. That way you could say for small, I want a margin right of 6, but this is not going to apply for desktop unless I'm explicit. That's what this will do. Take a look. Let's look for large and then margin right. Let's do 6. Okay, there you go. And by the way, if you're curious, if we scroll all the way up, we should see the breakpoint. There's a lot here, of course. There it is. So these are all wrapped within a breakpoint where the minimum width has to be 992 pixels. Only then will these be available. Anyways, if we bring this back, yeah, let's say you don't need those. Okay, well, we can remove that entirely. Now, if we compile everything down, you won't get those responsive classes. All right, let's come back. And once again, we're going to look for large, margin top, and yeah, we won't get anything at all. Now, generally, I don't think you'll need to configure these too much. It's only in the situations where you need to override the defaults. So for example, let's come down to text colors. Here you can see, yes, you want responsive text colors. So for example, we could say for a large, for a desktop view, I want the text to be red. Yeah, we can have those if we want. Or if you don't anticipate needing to change color based on the breakpoint, then you could remove that. But you'll also see one here called hover. So this means when you hover over an element, do you want to change the text color? That will take the shape of something like this. Nice and intuitive. Let's see if we can find that in the compiled file. So when we hover, I want to look for a text of red. Yeah, here you can see one value here. And you'll notice in this case, we're combining both variants. So we're saying for a large desktop, when the user hovers, then apply a text color of red. And you'll see to make that work, we just grab the element associated with that class. We add a hover listener or a pseudo class. We add a hover listener, a pseudo class. And in that case, we change the color to the text red. Anyhow, once again, if you don't need that, you can remove it. Or in situations where it's not available out of the box, you can simply add it in. So maybe you want to change the SVG fill. All right, if that will be dependent upon hover, then you can add it in here. All right, let's give that another compile, and we'll take a look. We'll switch back, and now we should have hover, fill, current. Yeah, now that's available specifically because we added it in here. But I'll go ahead and remove that. Okay, so to finish up, let's just do two final things here. Now you'll notice in my webpack.mix.js file, I'm pulling in a Laravel Mix plugin called Tailwind. Once again, you can pull that in very easily, or you don't even need a plugin, you can do it yourself. But if you want a little bit of shorthand, you can install that. And then with Mix, you simply require it, and you now have a new .tailwind method you can use. This takes care of everything for you. The only remaining step, and again, you don't have to refer to this video, the Tailwind documentation will tell you each step of the way. But anyways, if I take a look at my entry file, and you'll see this is what we're referencing here, this is what we have. So we add the Tailwind preflight, that's a mixture of a normalizer and things like that. We have the Tailwind components that you might pull in. We then have your custom components that you might create. And then finally, the standard Tailwind utilities. And those were all the things we were just reviewing earlier in the video. And you know what? Kind of like Git, this basic knowledge you have in this video, it's going to take you 80-90% of the way there. It's going to handle most of the things you need to do. If you ever do need to dig further and create your own custom Tailwind plugins or themes, you can definitely do that. But I think for most people, you'll find everything we've covered here is all you need to know. So now, if we come back to our welcome view, you can see here's that plan section that we worked on in the last episode. So here we have 4 different plans. Now, hopefully all of this is starting to make much better sense. So in this case, we have a text of gray darkest, but maybe your designer wants an olive color and there's many shades of olive. Okay, well, we could update that. And if you want this to work, what do? Well, you go back to your Tailwind class. You're going to look for your colors. This is what I often search for to quickly track it down. And yeah, anywhere you need to here, you can add your olive. And if you want to maintain the convention, yeah, you might want to do like olive darker. We talked about this earlier, where out of the box for any given color, you'll have the darkest version, the darker, the dark, the base color, and then a slightly lighter one, even more lighter, and then the lightest variant. But again, you can configure this stuff however you want using any convention you need. So if we add that in, now normally you'll have npm run watch running behind the scenes. And this is through Mix and through Webpack. We monitor your files for changes and we recompile them. But Tailwind will also monitor this file. So if you do change it, it will recompile everything to reflect those changes. Anyways, that has compiled down, which means you'll now find a text olive color or a background olive. Anyhow, that means we're all set to use this. Really simple. Oh, and actually one more thing. You'll see here, this is actually targeting a small breakpoint or medium or large, whatever you need. If you don't like those values, once again, you can configure those as well. So here are the various screens, some good documentation here if you need it. But yeah, if you want to do something like mobile or desktop here, these are traditional breakpoints you might get with a tool like Bulma, then you can update those as well. So now you can see that compiles behind the scenes. So if we look, you'll see those values have now been updated, which means if you want to target widescreen devices and change the color, it's not overly applicable here, but you could say widescreen, and I want the background color to be black. And then widescreen, I want the text to be white. All of this is going to be available to you. Okay, so hopefully that fills in some gaps. In the next episode, let's learn some more.